Good morning. Hopefully you're all live now. I'm Andy Hawkes. I'm the CEO of Cardinus, and I want to welcome you all to the first Cardinus Connect Summit, where we ask the question: How will you meet challenges of a changing world? As we emerge from the so-called into the so-called new norm, one thing is clear: that we're seeing an acceleration in change that verges on mutation, and every day has been a learning day and will continue to be a learning day. We're seeing new business models emerge. We've got new workforce strategies being discussed. Change management solutions are being bounded about, and management of risk has catapulted to the top of boardroom agendas. Over the next 2 days, you'll be hearing from 29 amazing speakers who've given their time freely to share their expertise, but probably more importantly, their experiences of the past 18 months, and also their views on how to manage going forward the workplace and the workforce in this sort of post-pandemic out of lockdown world that we're going to be living in. I want to really thank every one of those speakers for giving their time, this event just could not have happened without them. We have a whole variety of sessions over the next couple of days: return to work issues, ergonomic equipment, workforce challenges, virtual assessments. But I've just picked out just a few that I certainly am going to be dipping into over the next couple of days. And I'm looking forward certainly to be hearing from Champion Health's Harry Bliss. We work very closely with Harry on a number of issues, and he'll be talking about building a data-driven wellbeing strategy for organisations, and I'm really looking forward to that. For a UK audience in particular, we have a session from Sally Roth. Sally is a senior partner of DAC Beechcrofts, the law firm, and she will explore the legal implications of a hybrid workforce. And I think there are some interesting issues that will emerge from this pandemic and the change that exists. From the US, we have insights from Susan Deneke of Marsh on the impact of virtual healthcare workers or virtual assessors and how that can drive down the cost of musculoskeletal injury. And tomorrow we have LaCondra Bass of Wells Fargo asking the question that I'm sure we're all asking: return to the office, are you ready? I'm really delighted that Crystal Bauer can join us. Crystal is a podcaster, motivational speaker, and a wellness expert at Live Greatly, and she'll be talking about work-life integration, thriving personally and professionally. And I think that's something that we all will be interested in. Vanessa Curtis and Julia Jensen from University of California are going to look at hoteling, shared and hybrid workplaces, and I know they've been doing a lot at the university on that subject. And tomorrow evening, UK time, we wrap up with Jeff Schmogitz. Jeff is the global ergonomics lead at Marsh, who will look at the wider implications and considerations of a flexible workforce. But there are many more speakers, more sessions, and I really urge you, if you haven't currently sort of had a proper look at the agenda, to go and have a look at all the speakers that we've got over the next couple of days. And we're going to give you plenty of time to look after your own well-being. So we have breathing and meditation breaks, and indeed a yogatation break has been put in. I have no idea what a yogatation break is, but I'm definitely going to join that one. And we have some networking sessions to discuss the topics that you hear about in a bit more detail. As we go through the day, in normal online terms, you'll be muted. So please use either the chat or the Q&A facility at the bottom of your screen. And please also note that we're live on LinkedIn this morning, so please do behave yourselves. You will have already booked and chosen sessions that you wish to attend. So at their allotted time, you just need to click on the link that you've been sent. But if you want to add some additional sessions, I think Stephen, who's moderating this event, will put in the connect link into the chat box. Just go back in there and you can add some additional sessions to your agenda if you've got that time available. Over 500 of you have actually registered for the summit, and you've chosen to spend your valuable time with us, and we really appreciate that. We hope that you gain some new insights, or maybe you'll challenge your existing thinking. Above all, please get involved, ask questions, challenge the speakers, and really enjoy the next couple of days and the sessions that you participate in. I'm going to hand you over now to Dr. Noorzaman Rashid, who is the CEO of the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. And we've asked him to give you a keynote address to really set the scene for the next couple of days, to look at the strategic challenges for businesses of an agile workforce. So Noorzaman, welcome, and I'm going to pass over to you. I'm going to join you towards the end just to pick up on some of the issues. So I'm going to mute and disappear.
Thank you very much indeed, Andy, for that introduction, and well done to Cardenas for establishing this summit. It looks really exciting. Hello, everyone. My name is Noorzaman Rashid. I'm the Chief Executive of the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. Our vision is to improve life, well-being, and performance. The aim here is to reduce human error, increase productivity, and enhance safety and comfort with specific focus on interaction between humans and the thing of interest. And that thing may include artificial intelligence. We adopt a very human-centric approach and systems thinking. So it should come as no surprise that as ergonomists and human factors professionals, we are heavily focused on how humans can perform at their very best in the workplace. That workplace can be a space station in outer space, in a nuclear submarine operating 500 meters below sea level, sitting in as a passenger in an autonomous vehicle, or being in a factory floor to open plan office, or indeed working from a bedroom or kitchen table. With chartered and technical members all over the world, our field of expertise combines numerous disciplines: psychology, engineering, technology, biomechanics, industrial design, and of course, physiology. Suffice to say, we work very closely with many allied professional bodies, including the Institute of Risk and Safety Management, British Occupational Hygiene Society, Institute of Occupational Medicine, Engineering, Design, and Medical Royal Colleges, and many more. Okay, let's talk about agility. I first came across the term over 30 years ago, working in management consultancy and supply chain management. Organizational agility is seen as critical to business success. It has the potential to offer organizations practical solutions to meet evolving needs of their workforce, as well as controlling operational costs and finding greater competitive advantage in greater customer focus and innovation. While agile working, or flexible or hybrid working, as some people may refer to it, may be similar in how they achieve their aim, for example, all three of those approaches may allow an employee to work from home. Flexible and hybrid working focuses on the employee, while agile working tends to focus on the impacts on the business. The benefits of agile working, often quoted, include workplace utilization. Many companies are spending money on office space that is underutilized currently. Attracting and retaining the best talent in increasingly staff are looking for flexible hours. You might hear something about reducing carbon footprint, increased productivity and efficiency, and even increased innovation in work practices and opportunity to adopt new technology. Sadly, I don't think enough's quoted on staff physical and mental well-being, which many of the speakers will be addressing over the next couple of days. Okay, businesses of all shapes and sizes are facing some strategic issues now and some for the future that will impact organization culture, i.e. the way we work, individual and team performance. But honestly, just as importantly, The decisions businesses take now will impact their ability to recruit and retain future talent in an ever-changing landscape of work, which of course will impact business performance. The pandemic has nudged organizations into what we call disruptive thinking, and it's turbocharged the conversations around agile working. What I mean about disruptive thinking is ways of working that is impacting on how organizations work and do things in a way that they had not imagined previously. The coronavirus pandemic's reached almost every country in the world one way or another. Its spread has left national economies and businesses counting the cost as governments struggle with new lockdown measures to tackle the spread of new and more virulent strains. Trials are taking place to consider what role booster vaccinations can play in halting the onslaught of new strains. Sadly, low-income countries are still playing catch-up. That's one of the reasons why my institute published a guide called Vaccinating a Nation, to help share our learning about how to set up a vaccination program as safely as possible. I mention this because vaccination centres are, of course, a workplace too. Businesses across the UK have been negatively affected by the pandemic, but the damage has not been equal. Certain sectors and certain firms within them have suffered more than others, and many face highly uncertain futures still. The risks of infection from different activities, the ability to operate remotely, and the policies to contain the spread of the virus have each played a role. These have all affected current business expectations about the future. Industries that rely on personal interactions, on travel, have been hardest hit, of course. There are large differences in the ability of workers to work from home due to the type of business and limitations on employees. For example, workers with children may struggle to work productively while also homeschooling. Young workers in shared accommodation may also struggle to find space to work, all contributing to the physical and mental unwellness of people. Disruptions to supply chains, the ability of firms to access the supplies they require to conduct their business, has affected some businesses more than others too. Post-Brexit issues and that enormous traffic jam in the Suez Canal are examples of how other issues can affect supply chain disruption. If you want to learn more about the impact and detail of the pandemic and to do with agile working, a lot of organizations have prepared surveys and reports. The main surveys in the UK to consider impact on business are Decision Making Panel, or referred to as DMP, and surveys conducted by the British Chambers of Commerce, the Confederation of British Industry. In addition, response to the crisis, the Office for National Statistics launched the new Business Insights Conditions Survey. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but look up ONS and you'll find the link. These are key sources of information to help. Okay, let's move on to some of these strategic issues for business. Real estate and property portfolios is one of the big strategic issues. Businesses will need to make decisions on how much property they want to own or rent and where. I mean, imagine a major city, wherever in the world, if a large office block reduced its daily number of workers from, say, 3,000 per day to 1,000 or even less. It's not only about how the new office space will be designed and remanaged, but it's about the space needed eventually and the impact on local amenities and businesses that rely on these workers to spend money coming in and out of the area. This is a real issue in major cities around the world where workers commute to large office buildings or business parks. You'll hear a lot about mental and physical well-being over the next 2 days. It's key to good performance. It's a current operational issue and a future strategic issue. And goodness knows, businesses are yet to realize the impact of what is referred to as long COVID, i.e. the medical conditions that people are suffering as a result of COVID. HR, occupational health teams, workforce data analysts are all scrambling to find data to help us with strategic decision making. Firms like DigiWorks, who I like a lot, specialize in workforce data and have managed to support businesses and helping us to look at the way we consider these strategic issues. Lots of people have got a lot to say about current working conditions and how they can be changed to improve performance and their physical well-being. But most importantly, the issues around how often an employee works from home versus the office, bearing in mind we are just learning about how many young people living in flats working from their bedrooms really do want to go back into the office environment or not. Here's a new term for you: biophilic design. Biophilic design is something we will increasingly hear more about. This is where designers bring the outside environment inside, such as running water, live planting of trees and other greenery, better air circulation. Where this has happened, there are studies that have shown improvements in not only well-being, but productivity, and in particular, productivity on the factory floor. Work from anywhere, location independent jobs have become de facto in the current pandemic, whereas modern tools such as technology and telecoms have provided the ability to work from anywhere in the past. Boston Consulting Group's Workplace of the Future survey found that companies expect around 40% of their employees to follow a remote working model in the future. There's another term, remote working. However, the future is unlikely to be heterogeneous, as there are still many roles that require physical presence to the nature of existing customer or system interfaces in sectors. Now, the evolution of software and new technologies will either be a major disruptor in how and where we work in the future. So this needs serious consideration today. Bringing staff back to the workplace safely, there's a real strategic issue about this, but in the long-term investment, how will technology play out? Work, people say, will become smarter. I agree, as artificial intelligence and human-machine collaboration will take over some repetitive tasks and routine tasks, freeing humans to use their time differently in the work environment. We're going to hear a lot more about robotics and automation in many different scenarios that will play a significant role in augmenting or replacing the human interface. The gig economy, as we know it, has reinforced a culture of flexible working. That is, people choosing to work when and where they want, allowing businesses to specifically fill gaps and employ freelancers who are perhaps too expensive to employ on permanent contracts. So, what are the key strategic issues in summary? Property and real estate portfolios, utilization of emerging technology, the impact on employees and on business, and the impact on local communities. Fourthly, differentiating the now issues from how things might be in the near future. And fifth in my list of strategic issues, investment in workforce data analysis to inform decision making. Of course, no presentation is complete without sharing a few tips. So here are some tips that I've gathered from others on implementing agile working. First, determine what you mean by agile working and be clear on what the benefits are for staff and the disadvantages. From a business perspective, be clear on what positive impacts you're looking for. Develop the agile working model bottom up, i.e., collaborate and involve staff and worker organizations. Fourthly, consider the big strategic changes and what organizational change model you adopt to make these things happen. I'm very surprised that in some cases where leaders and managers still lack an understanding of what we mean by agile working. So it's important to make sure that leaders and managers understand what your organization means by agile working. Last but not least, HR, OD teams, occupational hygiene teams must help to evolve policies and practices that are inclusive to avoid discrimination, avoid unconscious bias and practices that exclude one group of staff or another, particularly as we move to different models of working. That draws my presentation to an end. So thank you to Cardenas Risk Management and Connect for curating this summit, and the speakers who follow me, who will very ably speak about some of the topics in more detail than I have. But I do hope I've set a little bit of a framework for today. Thank you very much indeed. And let's have a few questions. Andy.
Noorzaman, thank you so much for that, for setting that scene. And whilst people perhaps think about some questions, I'm just towards the end there, you talked about inclusivity. And I know from past conversations, it's something that you are passionate about and how that impacts on the workforce. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course, Andy. Thanks. That's a good one for you to pick up, given my passion. We talk about mental and physical well-being. Mental well-being is also about workers feeling safe in an environment. So all of the things we've talked about, the technology, the physical environment, is really important for staff, but how they feel safe psychologically in terms of how they're being treated, how they're being involved, is actually an ergonomics issue, because it's to do with the human and how they think and how they feel to perform. And so I really do urge our HR colleagues and those in organization development to think about how, as workforces are increasingly becoming diverse, to think about how we find ways to engage them. The other thing, Andy, to consider is through agile working, the management tiers are flattening also. There's fewer, the hierarchy is shorter. And so there's a real need for leaders, managers to understand how to engage staff that may not be introverts on things like Zoom or webinar platforms, so to engage them, to collaborate with them. And so I feel inclusivity, we need to be careful that our unconscious bias doesn't come into play, because including people is also a safety issue.
Absolutely. I'm just seeing if we've got any questions arrive. I think people will need a bit of coffee this morning or are being very shy. Just in case anyone does come through, I've got another one here that I picked up on. We've got organizations that are out there listening in. What do you see as the immediate sort of business needs for organization? What is the absolute, you gave us some great tips there, but what do you see as that immediacy?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of different types of organizations, actually, and it could be a university, it could be a hospital, it could be a mining industry, it could be a professional services firm. And what I see is a lot of urgency in dashing around getting our workspaces ready for people to come back to work without considering the implications for the future. Just as the pandemic has turbocharged how we all work digitally right now. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about it that people who would previously turned their noses up to online meetings are now constantly saying they're not sure why they should go back to so many face-to-face meetings that take up time. Similarly, I think the way we work will be turbocharged by people thinking about what does the future office look like and how do we as humans interact in that space. And so immediately we're looking at safety in terms of the office space, occupational hygiene, occupational health issues, social distancing, etc. But that would be a little bit too short term. I think companies who companies need to think more strategically about how they want to position their businesses in the future. And I hope some of my uh, presentation today allowed them to think about that. And of course, there are some people thinking so much about the future, they're not thinking about their staff well-being now. So it's a very fine balancing act to sort the now out, but don't make the now permanent because it will change.
I think that double vision is critical. We do have a question from Paul Whitehead, who has been struggling to post, so it's come through from Stephen. Noorzaman, what do you mean by investment in workforce data analysis, and what type of data should we be looking to collect?
Okay, so I imagine there's a lot of small businesses reading policy documents, going to briefings, and talking about what future flexible working is or agile working is. And this will be informed through anecdotes, through examples of what people are sharing. And so what we're saying is that organizations need to look at workforce data more than they've ever looked at before. At the moment, workforce data might be to do with numbers of staff, grade of staff, gender, ethnicity, sickness, absenteeism data, but there needs to be a lot more surveying on preferred methods and break down different groups of staffing, how they work and how it's impacting them. And how it's contributing to the business. So we're going to have to take workforce data to another level of analysis to help with decision making, and it's going to be different in every industry. I think that somebody always said to me, can you think of a job that might exist in the future that doesn't exist today? I think there'll be a job where there's a profession that just looks at workforce data, and they won't call them analysts. I don't know what they'll call them, Andy, but there'll be a professional whose entire job is about helping us as leaders make financial investments and decisions on how we treat our workers, how we organize them based on information we can find about their behavioral patterns, their preferred patterns, and what works best for them and for the company.
It's interesting. We've been, one of our speakers over the next couple of days, Stephen Bowden, who's got a fascinating session on NASA and movement. But we've been working with Stephen actually on a people analytics piece, and his whole theory is around the distraction of people from what makes you distracted from being the most efficient you can be in the whatever business you're involved in, whatever work you're doing, and looking at the entire 360-degree view of that individual as to how can I, what makes me distracted, and how that can be benchmarked from sector to sector, job to job. So I agree. I think there's an interesting world that will open up in that regard.
Yeah, distraction's an interesting thing, and I threw in a little bit about biophilic design, which is my latest sort of investigation, Andy, because we're working with architectural firms, interior designers, and I was quite surprised at evidence being given to me about how changing air quality systems on the factory floor, with bringing greenery in. I mean, it's not like a complete makeover of the factory floor, but just bringing it into the eye view of workers has actually impacted on how they feel about coming to work. And interestingly enough, has increased productivity, which is a complete bonus. And so, there is a real emergence of talking about environmental issues, climate issues, sustainability issues, and this is biophilic design will link in with that. And I think all of us working in safety, in reducing risk, in improving performance, will all start talking about the green environment as well.
Well, let's hope so. And I think it's absolutely right. Just as we've got no other questions coming through at the moment. I've just got one final one that I picked up on, and that's kind of in that double vision view. We talked a bit about the short term needs. In terms of that longer term view, if you take a 5-10 year horizon, how do you see? I mean, maybe biophilic design will be a critical part of that. But any particular views on that longer term view?
Yeah, I'm really surprised at how much technology is on our mobile devices now, and that we don't actually use. Reminding us of actions we need to take, scanning our emails to say what we've got to do or what we've agreed to do. And that's a little bit about automated artificial intelligence. And so for me, there's a lot of companies looking at how automation, artificial intelligence can be used to help us as humans do our work. A really good example is we use Alexa or Siri these days to ask questions, but just as the mobile phone evolved very, very quickly over a decade, I think that technology will evolve where when you're writing a speech, or if you're putting a presentation or a training package or a proposal or writing a report, you can have a much stronger interface with some form of automated artificial intelligence to help you do your work easier. There'll be discussions on, oh, what more does my work involve then if I can work faster, more efficiently? And that will eventually roll into, I think, eventually a flexible week of maybe 4 days rather than 5 days as we know it today. So the evolution of technology to help us work is really only just around the corner. The pandemic's nudged us into working digitally and online. We're using a platform today that everybody's very familiar with, but imagine in 5 years' time, the type of platforms that will be available to us to interact in a much more qualitative way with our audiences. So I think that the long term is don't take your eye off the ball about how technology can help us.
Thanks, Noorzaman. I remember once back in the late 90s, someone telling me an internet year was going to be a dog year. I think we're probably into several dog years for an internet year. Uh, really appreciative of your time this morning. We haven't got any more questions from the audience. I'll give it one last chance if anyone has got it. Oh, there's a Q&A just come through. Let me. Okay, from Paul Acosta, we don't hear so much about virtual reality. Is that something that will see a renaissance to broaden the scope of what type of work can be done remotely?
Yeah, that's a huge topic. I'm not an expert in it, but I can tell you I'm talking to a lot of VR experts at the moment. You'll know, Andy, that I put in a bid to run the International Ergonomics Association's conference in 2027. It seems a long time away. And I got a group of technologists together, and I said, what does an international conference with 4,000 people look like in 2027? And they gave me a whole list of technology that doesn't work now, but will work in 2027. And it included holographs, not holograms where people are in 3D and they're moving, talking, but images, 3D images projected. So, if we're in a hall, they can project 3D images with sound, etc. And they know that that's on its way. They'll also look at where virtual reality is used in training, working staff. There's already lots of examples of that. And once you interface virtual reality with automated artificial intelligence, it will be a significant part of the future of work. And so I say again, people like us interested in safety, in risk, in improving performance, a lot of what we do in the future will be related to these technologies.
I agree. We've seen some fascinating virtual reality training programs over the last couple of years. Another question that's come in, Noorzaman, are there any studies in the public domain that you know of where the cost benefit analysis has been completed on hybrid working factoring, of course, the financial saving in less office direct costs added to potential increased productivity of home-based working?
Yeah, that's a question that's asked every time. There isn't. There are very small localized studies, but I wouldn't really sort of use those studies, quite frankly. This is why when you do a sort of analysis, it's more than just the cost to the business. It's about the human being, as we say, their safety, their well-being, physical and mental. But then also remember, I added the social dimension of our corporate social responsibility of impact on the environment. And so depending on what kind of business you are, what your values are and what you're saying, your mix that you take into account is going to be slightly different to somebody that quite frankly doesn't give a damn about the environment. And so I think as we push along over the next few years, there'll be a lot more studies, particularly I can imagine in the public service, because I think that question came from the public sector, is that the audit commission they're highly likely to take a lot more studies in this area, and it's going to take a couple of years before we find meaningful evidence to base conversations on.
Okay, well, we're sort of coming towards the end of the time anyway. One last moment, if just in case there's any last minute questions that pop up, which there aren't at the moment. Noorzaman, can I thank you once again for your time this morning and your thoughts? It set the scene for our conference and our summit, and thank you. And I look forward to all the work that you continue to do at the Institute, and working with you on some of those things. So we will close now for this session, and we'll let the summit continue from here on in. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy your sessions today. Thank you, Noorzaman.